As some of you may or may not know, there are some pretty disastrous wildfires spreading across northern Alberta right now in my home province. A state of emergency has been declared and is ongoing. And a kind of a basic rundown on what's happened and where it stands now kind of goes as this. Roughly 2 weeks ago, so on the Tuesday of May 2nd, or sorry, May 3rd, um, as of the 2nd of May, so the Monday, there was a voluntary evacuation order for one neighborhood in my hometown of Fort McMurray. Uh, Unfortunately, overnight, about 12 hours, the wildfire roughly doubled in size to somewhere around 2,100 square kilometers. And just to give you some relative reference for how big a fire of that size is, the entire city of Chicago is roughly 600 square kilometers. So when we say that this fire is massive, I mean it's something of its own scale. Um, Tuesday afternoon around 2 o'clock local time, um, a mandatory evacuation order for the entire city, Fort McMurray, Sapre Creek, Gregoire Lake Estates, was issued. So this led to the evacuation of roughly 85 to 90,000 people. Some of these people were forced to flee with literally a minute's notice. So you can actually, if you YouTube, Fort McMurray fire, Beacon Hill or Abbotsford, you could see people literally like fleeing from their homes with only a few minutes to get away. Um, from there, um, a few neighborhoods were throughout the day and overnight were severely damaged. Neighborhoods of Abbotsford and Beacon Hill were specifically the most affected. Um, my childhood neighborhood of Beacon Hill suffered. Well, originally they thought the entire subdivision of roughly 2,500 homes was completely lost. However, the coming days they found that it was about 75 to 80% lost, so that's better. The subdivision of Abasand was roughly 50% lost in total as it stands since fires have continued to burn in the area. Um, a total of roughly 2,000 structures have been lost, or 2,400 structures have been lost, and about 2,000 of those were homes. Luckily, and this feels strange to say luckily though, only 85% of the city, or sorry, 85% of the city still stands. So they only lost about 15% of the city when initial projections were closer to 60%. They projected to lose about 60% of the city. So that's essentially what's happened. About 20,000 to 30,000 people were actually evacuated north of the city into work camps and the oil sands plants, and the rest were evacuated south to Edmonton and Calgary. Um, Obviously, that created some logistical challenges. Luckily, however, due to the monumental efforts of the RCMP and local emergency services, there were no fatalities related directly to the fire. There were two fatalities regarding a traffic accident during the evacuation, but to date, nobody has been lost to the fire. Um, Regarding the evacuation, it was incredibly hairy. Um, I have a lot of friends and family still up there. One story specifically that kind of highlights how quick it happened is the fire essentially changed course on a dime. Uh, and essentially what happened is that you have this effect during large wildfires called crowning. So with really high winds, what happens is that instead of spreading across the ground, the fire will spread across the treetops. And when that happens, the fire spreads faster than anybody can run, or faster than some vehicles. It spreads so quickly that the RCMP essentially was barely able to get people out of the neighborhoods in time, which is highlighted by a specific story with one of my best friends. His father had actually just laid down to take a nap to go to work for night shift, and got a bang on the door, and it was the RCMP officer. Basically, got him out of the house. He jumped in his truck, couldn't go to the road because it was on fire, and went across a field, over a ditch, onto the highway, turned around and watched his house catch fire. So I mean, he literally a few minutes longer, he might not have gotten out of there. So that's where we're at with that. Uh, the fires currently have been put out in the city. The fire itself now is contained as of a week and plus more later. Um, they're still assessing the extent of the damage. They already have people back in the city working on critical infrastructure. The airport, most of the major power centers, water treatment plant, all that stuff was saved due to the efforts of the firefighters and the emergency services. So they did an incredible job. Um, yeah, as per uh, the donations and the volunteer side, um, the outpouring of support has been unreal. It's been unbelievable. In less than a week, more than $54 million in private donations were given to the Canadian Red Cross. Um, that was as of the 9th of May. So that number is a lot higher now, and that number will be matched by both the Alberta provincial government and the Canadian federal government, bringing that number of higher than $160 million in less than a week. So from a cash perspective, it's incredible. Um, I've been volunteering at the Edmonton Relief Services Society, so I've been basically from Tuesday on. Um, so my experience for volunteering has been working a lot of logistics, so organizing truck runs to the evacuee center that's been set up in the north end of town, moving things between the different warehouses in the aircraft hangar to Northlands, moving things to the evacuee center that we've due to an agreement between the city of Edmonton and Kingsway Mall. A now empty Target store has been converted into a store where evacuees can come in, be taken around the store, and take out essential items like clothes, underwear, toiletries, hygiene products, pillows, blankets, basically all the immediate necessities that you would need to get through day-to-day life. Because again, most of these people fled their homes with just minutes, so it's grab your kids, grab the wife, get in the car, and you're gone. The Canadian Red Cross is, as I mentioned, had set up an evacuee center at the north end of town at the Northlands Expo Center, which is attached to the local hockey arena. There are, I believe it's roughly 3,000 or 4,000 people that are there. The University of Alberta has another, I think, 1,500, and then all hotels and inns all over the city have taken in up to like 400 to 500 people apiece. So basically, anybody with a spare bed is donated it. There's all kinds of property management companies that are giving 3-4 months rent to any empty apartments or condos they had. Uh, Businesses have stepped up and donated, like aircraft hangars for us to store donations. The 5 or 6 warehouse spaces have been donated and have been filled. Home Depot has been incredible in our efforts. They've donated more truckloads of boxes and tables and chairs and supplies than I can count anymore. I know Ford Canada has donated about $500,000 in total to date in cash. Nike and Adidas both have donated $20,000 apiece worth of shoes to evacuee centers. So that was incredible because they were needed. I know Peter Monk, who's a big mining magnate, personally donated over $1 million. Yeah, you can't drive through the city right now without seeing signs for free services for Fort Mac evacuees, free rides from cabs, towing services. Every clothing retail outlet that I can find is giving anywhere from 25 to 75 to 80% off, up to maximums of $300 or $400. The outpouring of support has been incredible, all the way from Vancouver Island to St. John's, Newfoundland. I mean, we have donations being flown in from all over the country. We have cash donations coming from all over the country. It's crazy. We've had well over 1,000 volunteers in around a week's time. The people come in and you're seeing the same faces day in, day out. People are showing up, for from a few hours to a time to 12, 14 hours a day for a week. People have really stepped up to try to make a difference and try to help these evacuees and these people who really have lost everything, just to have just the basic necessities to get by until more permanent measures can be brought forward. So I can't say enough about their time and their effort, and the long days that a lot of these people have put in, and really sacrificed their own time and their own lives to try to make a difference. So for those interested, uh, volunteers, I've talked about how many volunteers we've had that stepped in and helped, but we need so many more bodies every day. If you're in the northern Alberta, if you're in the Edmonton area, please, if you got a few hours in the week after school or after work or on the weekend, just come in, help us out. We got all kinds of things you can do if you want to answer the phone or help people sign up with registration or help us unload or load trucks or just take a family around and help them pick out the necessary items they need from the storage areas, or whatever you want to do. We'll help you find something to make a difference. The easy way to look at the locations and the hours for where we need volunteers is, you can go to www.eerss.org slash fort, F-O-R-T dash Mac, M-A-C, and that will bring up the exact page for the Edmonton Emergency Relief Society, and it will show you all the volunteer locations and all the hours where we need volunteers. If you want to donate, if you're in northern Alberta or if you're in the Edmonton area, the things most desperately needed are new clothes, specifically new clothes. Although used clothes are appreciated, they take a lot of time and man hours for us to deal with, and we're, as you can understand, understaffed, so that stuff, it makes this really difficult for us to make usable. Beyond that, uh, toiletries, so toothpaste, toothbrushes, pillows, blankets, personal effects like deodorant and hygiene items, shoes, socks, underwear. Anything you wouldn't think to grab while you're running out of your house because it's about to catch fire. Really goes a long way. And if you're looking to donate with money, cash is king, goes great, makes it really easy for the Red Cross to put it where it's needed. It's redcross.ca, which will take you directly to the Canadian Red Cross site. And I'm not sure if this works abroad, but within Canada, you can text Red Cross, all capital letters, so REDCROSS, to 30333, and that'll come up with an option to automatically donate $5 to the Canadian Red Cross. You know what? I grew up in Fort McMurray, and it's it's a really blue collar, hardworking town, and I really mean that when I say it's a very tightly knit community. Um, they People in that town really take care of each other. It's where you know your neighbors, and you see the same people when you come home from work every day. Um, it, the community looks out for each other, and they've donated a ton of money and a ton of time to other places when they've needed it, and for these people, I mean, for 100,000 people to be evacuated, and for, I mean, you're looking at least probably 5 to 6,000 people at least have lost their homes. It goes beyond the word tragedy doesn't capture the scope and scale of the devastation. Um, my childhood neighborhood is quite literally a smoking ruin. It's really hard to look at those images, and I encourage anybody, if you have any time or a few dollars to donate or any way you want to help out, please do, because it's greatly appreciated, and it goes a long way to helping a family who's lost everything and doesn't know when they're going to be able to go home, and you're living in a cot in an evacuation center. Every little bit helps. And beyond that, just a thank you to everybody who's stepped up to help out with time and money, and to all the businesses and the corporations who stepped up to make huge impacts for us, and make our efforts have an impact and facilitate those efforts has been huge. And the media coverage has been really good and really appreciated as well. And as Justin and James would say, enjoy your existence.